It was a cold, stormy evening in Nairobi. Rain was pouring so hard it sounded like stones hitting my roof. I was just about to lock my door when I heard a loud knock. When I opened it, a woman stood there, soaked to the bone, her shawl dripping water onto the floor. Her face was hidden, but I could see the fear in her shaking hands. "Please, just 1 hour," she whispered, almost out of breath. Before I could say a word, she pushed 4 children inside, all wet, hungry, and terrified. The oldest girl held a torn teddy bear close to her chest, her big eyes full of confusion. The smallest boy kept crying, "Mama! Mama," as the woman turned and ran back into the rain. I waited, thinking she'd come back soon. 1 hour passed. Then 2. I made the children some tea and tried to calm them, watching the door every few minutes. Midnight came. The storm ended. But she never returned. The kids huddled together on my old couch, finally falling asleep, their faces soft and innocent. I sat beside them, listening to their quiet breathing, my heart heavy with worry. I didn't know who they were or why she had left them with me, but something deep inside told me they were now my responsibility. That night, I didn't just open my door to strangers, I opened my life to a story that would change everything forever. The next morning, I woke up early, hoping to hear another knock on the door, hoping she had come back for her children. But there was only silence. The rain had stopped, and the city was waking up, but inside my little home, the air was heavy with worry. The 4 children sat close together, still wearing the wet clothes from the night before. I made them porridge with the little maize flour I had left. They ate quietly, their eyes darting to the door every few minutes, expecting their mother to walk in. I told them she would come soon, though deep down, I wasn't so sure. A whole day passed, then another. I waited, checking the road every hour. When a week went by with no sign of her, fear began to grow inside me. Maybe she had been in an accident, I thought. Or maybe she got lost somewhere. I took the children to the nearest police station, hoping someone had reported them missing. The officer listened, wrote a few notes, and then shook his head. No one was looking for them. No one had filed a report. The realization hit me hard. These children had been left behind, and I was all they had. Life changed after that. I stopped taking in sewing jobs for a while and focused on caring for them. Feeding 4 children was not easy. Some days, we only had tea and bread. Other days, I would sell a few fruits at the corner stand just to buy them rice. But somehow, we managed. The children started to smile again, little by little. The youngest boy, the one who used to cry for his mother every night, began calling me Mama Wima. At first, I told him not to, but the name stuck. Soon, all 4 of them were calling me that, and something inside me softened each time I heard it. My tiny apartment, once so quiet, became alive with noise and laughter. There were always footsteps running across the floor, the sound of little fights over toys, and giggles during dinner. I used to enjoy silence, but now, their voices filled every corner, and it felt like home. Yet, even with the joy, there was worry. Every night before sleeping, I'd stare at the door, half expecting the woman to return. What if she came back and took them away? Or worse, what if she never came back at all? My friends thought I had lost my mind. "Wima, they're not your children," one of them said. "You can't take care of 4 strangers forever." But when I looked at their faces, those small, trusting eyes, I knew I couldn't send them away. I couldn't abandon them the same way their mother did. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I promised myself one thing: as long as they were under my roof, they would never feel unwanted again. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still, no one came back. But by then, it didn't matter. Somewhere between the laughter, the late-night tears, and the shared meals, those children had stopped being strangers. They had become my family. Life with 4 children was full of love, but it was also full of struggle. I had no savings, no husband, and no help. Every morning before sunrise, I would leave the house quietly so I wouldn't wake them. I cleaned people's homes, scrubbed floors until my hands hurt, then rushed to the market to sell fruits under the hot sun. In the evenings, I sewed dresses for neighbors who couldn't afford tailors. Some nights, I would sit at my sewing machine until my eyes could barely stay open. Every shilling I earned went to food, school fees, and rent. There was never enough, but I kept going. The neighbors talked, oh, how they talked. Some whispered that I had stolen the children. Others said I was crazy for taking on someone else's burden. A few kind souls called me a saint, but their praise didn't feed the kids or pay the bills. There were days I wanted to scream from exhaustion, days when I felt invisible. But every time I thought about giving up, I'd see those 4 faces, my little family, waiting at the window for me to come home. Their smiles made every sacrifice worth it. At school, other parents looked at me with pity or judgment. They saw a woman with no husband, struggling with children who didn't share her blood. But they didn't see the love that filled our tiny house at night, the laughter during dinner, the prayers before bed, the stories we told to forget our pain. The children had learned to call me Mama without hesitation, and that word alone gave me strength to face another day. Sometimes, after they fell asleep, I would sit by the window and cry quietly. I cried from tiredness, from fear, from wondering if I was doing the right thing. I asked God why fate had chosen me. Why me, a woman with so little, to raise 4 abandoned souls? But maybe that was the answer, maybe He knew I would never walk away. We had hard days. Days when there was no sugar for tea, when shoes had holes, and school fees were due. I remember one night when the rain leaked through the roof, soaking our blankets. The children laughed, pretending it was fun, while I hid my tears. But even in those moments, they never complained. They'd say, Mama, we're okay. We have you. And somehow, that gave me the courage to start again every morning. Over time, the same neighbors who once judged me began to respect me. They saw how hard I worked, how happy the children were, how close we had become. I realized then that blood doesn't make a family, love does. Fate had thrown us together in the strangest way, but it had given me a purpose I never knew I needed. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building a family from the ashes of abandonment, a family born from struggle, stairs, and strength. 10 years had passed since that stormy night when everything began. The children were no longer little. They were tall, confident, and full of dreams. Our home, once small and crowded, had grown into a warm, happy place. Every Sunday morning, we'd have tea together, laugh about the week, and thank God for how far we'd come. Life finally felt calm, like the storm had passed for good. But I was wrong. One Sunday, as we were clearing the breakfast table, I heard something slide under the door. I walked over, thinking it was a flyer or a bill. It was a letter. My name was written in sharp, slanted handwriting I recognized but didn't want to remember. I opened it slowly. The message was short, only 4 words, but they made my heart stop. I'm coming for what's mine. My hands shook as I read it again and again, hoping I had misunderstood. But the truth was clear. She was back. The woman who had vanished into the rain 10 years ago, the woman who left 4 children at my doorstep, was coming back. For days, I couldn't eat or sleep. I watched the road from my window, waiting, worrying, praying it was a bad joke. The children noticed my fear, but I didn't tell them why. How could I? I didn't want to break their peace. Then one afternoon, a shiny black car stopped outside our gate. It wasn't like any car that came to our humble neighborhood. The engine purred, smooth and expensive. I froze. The children gathered behind me, curious. The door opened, and out stepped a woman dressed in diamonds and high heels, her perfume filling the air. My heart sank. It was her. She looked different, richer, colder, and full of something dark. She smiled, but it wasn't the smile of a mother. It was the smile of someone who had come to win. The children stood still, staring in disbelief. The oldest girl, now a young woman, covered her mouth. "It can't be," she whispered. The woman walked closer, her heels clicking on the pavement. Her eyes scanned each of their faces, one by one, like she was counting something that belonged to her. Then she said, with a voice that sent chills down my spine, "Children, Mommy's home." Silence filled the air. My heart broke watching their faces twist in confusion and fear. They didn't run to her. They didn't smile. They just stood there, frozen between the past and the present. She looked at me then, her eyes cold and sharp. "You've had them long enough," she said softly. "Now, it's time they come back to me." In that moment, everything I had built for 10 years, every laugh, every sacrifice, every moment of love, felt like it was slipping away. I didn't know what she wanted or why she had come back after so long, but one thing I knew for sure, I wasn't going to let her take them without a fight. The days after her return felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. The woman who had once left her children in the rain now stood tall, rich, and powerful. She didn't come for love, she came for revenge. Within a week, I received court papers accusing me of kidnapping. My heart sank as I read the words. She claimed I had stolen her children for money, that I had lied to everyone about being their guardian. I had no legal documents, no proof of how they came to me. All I had was the truth, and love. When the police came, the children screamed and clung to me, refusing to let go. "Mama, we're not leaving you," they cried, but the officers said we had to appear in court. The neighbors watched as they led us away, some whispering, others crying. The whole neighborhood knew our story, but in that moment, gossip didn't matter. My world was falling apart. The courtroom was cold, filled with people I didn't know. The woman sat across from me, her face calm, her lawyer beside her. She looked at me like I was nothing. Her lawyer painted a cruel picture, that I was a poor woman who had taken advantage of lost children, that I used them for sympathy and money. Each word cut deep, but I stayed silent, praying for strength. The judge asked for proof. I had none. No photos from that night, no records, no adoption papers. All I had were my memories of the knock, the rain, and the terrified children who became my world. Then came the hardest part, the children were called to the stand. My hands shook as I watched them walk to the front. The oldest girl, now 17, looked so grown yet so fragile. The lawyer questioned her harshly. "Did this woman ever force you to stay? Did she ever make you work for her?" The girl looked down, tears forming in her eyes. I couldn't breathe. Then she lifted her head, her voice trembling but clear. "She didn't steal us," she said. "She saved us." The courtroom went completely silent. Even the judge stopped writing. She continued, her words spilling out between sobs. "That night, our real mother left us. She didn't come back. Mama Wema gave us food, love, and a home. She's the only mother we've ever known." The other children nodded, tears running down their faces. My heart ached with both pain and pride. The woman's face changed, her fake confidence cracking for the first time. She shouted that the children were lying, that I had turned them against her. But no one seemed to believe her anymore. The room had shifted. The truth was beginning to show. When the judge called for a break, I sat there in silence, my heart heavy but hopeful. For the first time since that letter arrived, I felt like maybe love could stand against power. Maybe, just maybe, the truth would finally find its voice. The courtroom that once felt like a cage of fear slowly turned into a place of truth. Each day of the trial brought new faces, new questions, and new pain. The woman sat there, dressed in fancy clothes, pretending to be the perfect mother. Her lawyers spoke with confidence, calling me a liar, saying I had brainwashed the children. I sat quietly, clutching a small handkerchief, praying for strength. I had no lawyer, no money, and no proof. All I had was faith that the truth, no matter how buried, would rise. Then one morning, something unexpected happened. A man entered the courtroom, tall, nervous, eyes darting around. He was asked to testify. The moment he began to speak, the air changed. He told the court he had once worked with the woman. His voice shook as he revealed everything, how she had been part of a child trafficking group years ago, how they took children from poor areas and sold them to rich families abroad. He said when the operation collapsed, she ran away, leaving behind 4 children, her own, because she was afraid the police would catch her. The courtroom gasped. The judge's pen stopped mid-air. The woman's face turned pale. She shouted that the man was lying, but his story matched details no one else could have known. Documents were shown, photos were presented, bank transactions uncovered. The evidence was undeniable. Her entire past, built on lies and pain, began to crumble right before everyone's eyes. The same people who had once believed her now looked away in disgust. Her tears, once dramatic and fake, no longer fooled anyone. The children cried silently beside me. The oldest girl reached for my hand and whispered, "It's over, Mama." My heart swelled with both sorrow and relief. I didn't feel anger anymore, only pity. This woman, who had caused so much pain, had destroyed herself with her own choices. When the judge finally spoke, the room went completely still. His voice was firm and cold as he read the verdict. She was guilty, guilty of trafficking, fraud, and abandonment. The sound of the gavel hitting the desk echoed through the courtroom like thunder. The guards stepped forward and handcuffed her. She struggled, shouting my name, her eyes wild with hate. "This isn't over," she screamed as they led her away. But I didn't answer. I just held the children close, feeling their tears soak my shoulder. Reporters crowded outside the courthouse, cameras flashing, people whispering our story. But I didn't care about the noise. All I cared about was the small circle of arms wrapped around me, the family I had fought for, the family I refused to lose. As the doors closed behind her, I felt the weight of 10 long years lift from my chest. The truth had finally come out, and justice, though late, had found its way home. The day after the trial ended, I woke up to the sound of loud voices outside my window. When I opened the door, I was blinded by flashing cameras. Journalists crowded around my small gate, shouting questions, holding microphones, and taking pictures of me and the children. Someone had shared our story online, and by morning, it had spread across the country. Every newspaper, every TV station, every social media page was talking about the woman accused of kidnapping who turned out to be a hero. My phone, which had been silent for years, wouldn't stop ringing. People I didn't even know were calling to say they were proud of me. It felt strange, almost unreal. For 10 years, I had lived quietly, working hard, struggling to survive. No one had cared about our little family before. But now, everyone wanted to know us. Reporters asked me to tell the story again and again, about the rainy night, the knock on the door, the years of sacrifice, and the painful courtroom battle. I was nervous at first, but when I spoke, I saw tears in people's eyes. They weren't seeing a poor woman anymore, they were seeing a mother who never gave up. Charities began to reach out, too. They brought food, clothes, and school supplies for the children. Some offered to pay for their education. For the first time, I didn't have to worry about where our next meal would come from. I could finally breathe freely without fear of losing the people I loved most. Then one day, something happened that made me cry tears of joy. A government official visited our home. He said the government wanted to help us start over. They gave us a new house, not just a small room, but a real home with a garden and enough space for everyone. When we walked in, the children ran from room to room, laughing and shouting, unable to believe it was ours. I just stood in the middle of the living room, holding my heart and whispering, "Thank you, God." Life began to change fast. The children, now teenagers, became known around town as Weemas 4. They even made it their nickname, proudly using it online and at school. People who once doubted me now greeted me with respect and smiles. The same neighbors who used to whisper behind my back came to visit with gifts and congratulations. But beyond the fame and attention, what mattered most was the peace inside our home. We could finally live without fear. The children were studying hard, chasing dreams they had once thought were impossible. Every evening, we'd sit together at dinner, still laughing like we always did, only now with lighter hearts. What began as a tragedy on a stormy night had turned into something beautiful, a story of love that refused to break. Fate had tested us, but it had also blessed us. I had opened my door to strangers, and in return, I had found a family and a purpose that would forever change my life. Many years passed, and the children I had once rocked to sleep were now grown adults with dreams of their own. They were taller than me, confident, and full of life. One sunny afternoon, they took me on a drive to a place I hadn't seen in decades, the old bridge near where everything began. As we stood there, watching the river flow quietly beneath us, memories flooded back like the storm that had once changed our lives. I could almost see that frightened woman again, standing in the rain, begging for just 1 hour. The air was peaceful now, but my heart was heavy with emotion. The oldest girl, now a young woman, stood beside me and whispered, "You could have given up on us, Mama." I turned to her, smiling through tears. "No," I said softly. "You were never a burden, you were my miracle." They all came closer, wrapping their arms around me. For a moment, time stood still. We laughed, cried, and shared stories from the past, the hunger, the fear, the small victories that kept us going. Looking at their faces, I saw everything I had ever prayed for. They weren't the scared children I had once met, they were strong, kind, and full of purpose. As the sun began to set, I stared at the water and thought about that one promise, just 1 hour. It wasn't just time. It was destiny. That woman hadn't left me a burden, she had left me my purpose. God had used her storm to deliver my greatest blessing. That night long ago hadn't taken something from me, it had given me everything. And as we walked away from the bridge, I knew that love had written our story to last forever.